One of my favorite historic sites in the United States is Valley Forge. Went there with family members one time to visit the battlefield, and there is a family connection for me to Valley Forge through one of my ancestors who served in Washington's Army. So it was very telling to see the conditions under which they lived. I mean, this was during the early years of the American experiment, and Washington's army was in tatters. They weren't really an army. They were on the run for most of the beginning of the Revolutionary War, and he encamped there, and they took this ragtag bunch of guys and turned them into what became the greatest army in the history of the world, the United States Army.
One of my favorite historic places is Boston. And one of my favorite places there was Paul Revere's house. You know, so often you have the grand mansions that have been preserved, but that showed you sort of a middle class home. I just really thought it was very interesting to see how somebody besides the uber rich lived, and to think then extrapolate from there what it would have looked like if you had been poor. Wow, you know, if this is a middle class, you know, person who's making pretty decent money, you know, if this is what he's living in, that, you know, you got to wonder what the poor folks are living in.
One of my other favorite historical sites in Tennessee is actually Stones River, or where the Battle of Stones River occurred in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I learned a lot about not only the Civil War history there, but about the African American history there. Ex-slaves started flocking close to where the Union Army was, near where the Battle of Stones River happened, and they created a community called Cemetery Community. They had their own school, they had their own stores, they had their own churches. And one of my favorite stories is that in the 1920s, when all the Civil War battlefields were put under the Park Service Department, they actually picked up one of their churches and they put it on wheels and they rolled it down National Pike until they got off of the property and just set that church down right there. So I think it's funny and kind of illustrates how people in communities don't go very far from where they were raised usually, but sometimes people are done wrong even by the government that's trying to give them the freedoms that they deserve, and they do their best to kind of just make do and continue to live, and I just think that that's really fascinating.